R.I.P. Tom Benson. Shout out to the whole Who That Nation. Now who that? That fever, that flavor, that funk. I say who that? That fever, that flavor, that funk. Ooh, who that? That fever, that flavor, that funk. I say who that? That fever, that flavor, that funk. You got that fever? Yeah, yeah, that fever for the flavor. Got that flavor? Yeah, yeah, that flavor for the funk. You got that fever? Yeah, yeah, that fever for the flavor. Got that flavor? Yeah, yeah, that flavor for the funk. I got that fever, my people. See, we not equal, my people. I'm like that dog saint underneath the steeple, my people. Got Drew Brees, he the feature, and our defense the sequel. The D-line and linebackers, man, they coming to reach ya. Make enemies some believers, cause we overachievers. DBC 50-50 balls and we call them keepers. Y'all can follow this leader, cause Sean Payton will teach ya.
Hey, what's up, everyone? Nick Underold, NewOrleans.Football podcast. Joined here with Kevin Washington. I'm coming to you live from the Better Call Bado podcast studio. Got it on the mic there, and we got a good show for you guys today. A lot of stuff to talk about, just in terms of draft theory, what the Saints should do, what they can do, how they could play the board. Going to talk about some of the wide receivers. But before all that, Kevin, how you doing?
I'm good. This is a pod day. It's one of those days where you like wake up, Tuesday morning, you're like, oh yeah, the pod gonna be lit tonight. So this one of those days, I'm ready to get into it. Let's pay some bills.
Are you a business owner needing some guidance with your daily accounting? Daniel Sant CPA can help get your finances in order. They provide relevant accounting information, detailed analysis, and clear communication in a timely manner. Call today, 318-321-2765, or visit santcpa.com. And if you need any legal help with the following: car wrecks, offshore injuries, 18-wheeler collisions, Maritime Jones Act, hurricane and storm claims, you better call Bado at 504-323-323. Man, almost got through. Perfect. At 504-323-4777 or 985-677-1085 for your free consultation and case review. That is badolaw.com. And check out our guys, Firehouse Subs, Vets Boulevard location, best people in the city, best sandwich in the city.
Oh,
Check
man.
them out and get that Firehouse Sub. Kevin, where do you want to start the show, man?
Oh man, I want to start the show. Let's start off talking about kind of some draft theory, right? I think that it's always a fun topic, right? I think a lot of the times, when you see local media and national media, et cetera, talking about what a team should do in the draft, or if they do this then this, or if this trade is good or if it's bad, it just doesn't. I think it just really doesn't fit the narrative as much as a lot of people think it do, because teams don't think about things as statically as maybe as we do as people that cover the team, or some of the other commentators, right? I remember, just listening. You do so much stuff. I was listening to you talk today, and you was like, well, this draft could be, in each individual draft. I think it was the dot you did today. Each individual draft, picks are valued differently, right? If there's a lot of quarterbacks at the top and they're highly rated, then it's going to cost more to move up. If it's maybe not a strong quarterback draft, then the cost to move up or down is differently. So I think just kind of getting into that, talking a little bit about that, and breaking that down a little bit is going to be a fun topic. So just give me your thoughts on that real quick, and then we're gonna jump into the topic for real.
Yeah, we do a lot. There's a lot of stuff out there. The only person in the city that I think maybe outworks us is Currency, but if we're trying to help him. So, anyways, yeah. Anyways, yeah. Look, I mean, that is something that is interesting though, because I think in some drafts. Okay, so this is like probably a bad example to bring up because it's a potentially negative example, but like I think back to the draft where Jeff Ireland made the move up for Deion Jones, and like that was a draft where it was cheap to move up just because of the quality of the draft class. And then different classes where there's like a lot of good QBs, you usually have to pay a premium for those picks, which is going to take me to a slight aside here. One of the talking points that's out there is, and look, I don't think the Saints are going to trade up for a QB. I just don't think it's going to happen. It might right now, though. If you ask me to go somewhere and place a bet,
That wouldn't be your bet.
Colorado's casinos. We'll say your name there. But if you want us to go somewhere and place a bet, I would place my bet on no. And there's smoke screens and everything, so you never know. But I mean, that's kind of where my thought process is at right now. Is that no, it doesn't happen. But if you were a team that wanted to trade up for a quarterback and you did not sign a quarterback and you had a wide open hole at quarterback, you are paying significantly more to trade up when there are quarterbacks on the board because you are desperate and teams will take advantage of that. Yeah. So the idea that why would they sign a quarterback if they wanted to draft a quarterback? You might not be able to move up because you might go into a draft like last year where you want a cornerback and you can't move up and you don't get your guy. So you might not be able to move up. So you have to have a starter on payroll. B, $14 million is a contingency plan. Actually, 15.2 really is. Jameis is basically on a 1-year deal worth 15.2. That's really not that expensive. And if that player doesn't
for a quarterback at all, I mean,
it just is what it is. And again, see, if you don't have a quarterback and you're trying to trade up to draft a quarterback, you're paying extra. It's just the way it is. Oh, you need Kenny Pickett.
Yeah, man.
You know what I mean? So that's just kind of where you're at.
There's only one team in this draft that can 100% get the quarterback that they want. Everybody else is at the mercy of the rest of the teams in the draft, and that's just how it is, right?
Yeah. So I mean, it's just that's a talking point. I don't. It's just I don't understand it. I mean, I know it's out there. I don't understand the thought process behind that one. So I mean, that's just kind of one of the things that was kind of on the forefront of my mind. But if it just as a team building strategy, like you cannot leave quarterback open regardless. You have to address that position. Right. And it's like Sean Payton said the year they drafted Adrian Peterson, or I'm sorry, they signed Adrian Peterson and then signed Alvin. He said, well, you know what? Free agency comes before the draft.
Right.
That's just kind of the way.
Simple as that.
Kind of the way it is. So yeah, you have to address that. So
yeah.
I don't know. That's it. I'm off my tangent. So back to on topic.
Back on topic. Well, we I know that recently Mickey Loomis spoke with Peter King on his podcast, and he kind of, Loomis wasn't on the podcast, but him and Peter King had a chat, and Peter King spoke about, some of the things that Mickey Loomis said about, just their thought process on this draft and maybe some of the players that may be available. So we're going to play that clip. So let's go.
So Mickey Loomis's reasoning for this was very interesting. When I look at it, I look at the Philadelphia Eagles basically saying, we want insurance in case next year we need to have ammo to move up to get a quarterback if we decide that Jalen Hurts is not going to be our long-term quarterback. And the Saints have a much different view of this. The Saints say, hey, look, we understand that this draft might not be as good as some other drafts, either in the future or the past, in great players at the top. And I get that. But Loomis's point to me is that he said, let's say that 2 of the top 15, we stay right where we are, and we get 2 of the top, let's say 15, 17, 18 players on our board. Let's just say we do that. He goes, I'm telling you right now, there's 2 guys in that area where we think are going to be, there's 2 guys we really, really like a lot. And we think that if we do nothing else and just sit here, we're going to get 2 players who can help us right away. So Mickey Loomis.
Yeah, so that was a clip from Peter King on this podcast when he was talking to Mickey Loomis about the Saints and them kind of just being in the spot where they are, and they're saying, hey, just based on this draft, if we stay where we are, there's going to be a couple of guys that we like. So what's your thought process on, that philosophy where they say, hey, you know what? We made this trade. We don't know who's going to be there, but the way our board is shaping up, we feel good about this. Like, what do you think about that?
I think it's personally the best way to play it. Like, we talk a lot about quarterbacks, but I honestly think the best thing coming into this draft for this team, and just because I don't necessarily see the slam dunk surefire quarterback. I think it is taking 2 players right there, not trading up. Now, if a quarterback falls to one of those spots, I think it's a more palatable trade.
Yeah.
And then at that point, you got to weigh the cost analysis and everything. Going up to get one of those guys where it isn't necessarily like, yeah, this has to be the guy. Like I personally don't see that when I watch him. I like Pickett, and I think Pickett can be a good starter, but I don't know if he's a sell the farm for a guy. But again, at a certain point, it's like, well, okay, like it's leaning enough one way where it's 16 or 19. I think it's worth a gamble on him, and it's a calculated gamble. So if that feels right, yeah, I'd do it. But again, I think the best thing for this team is making 2 picks there, or there's door number 47. I don't know how many scenarios we talked to, but this one, the one that hasn't been really talked about, is maybe packaging 19 and 49 to go up and get one of the top 3 tackles before penning. You address a need there, and then you take Olave at 16, and that's kind of your haul. So that's another option as well. But I think it's very possible to address all the needs at 16, 19, and then you get your safety at 49 possibly.
Yep. No, I agree with that. I think that in the best case scenario, right, if you're the Saints, then you do, you kind of do well, given that, you like the way your board shakes out, it is best case scenario where you can just kind of stay put and pick 2 guys in the first round, because that's just, you got 2 first round players, right? I think it kind of speaks for itself, where in the alternatives, we spoke about moving up. Now, I will say that if they love the quarterback, if you love the quarterback and you think that the quarterback is the future, then the price is worth it, right? It is. I think that's just the nature of football. I know that it would be a controversial move. It definitely wouldn't be real well received by some, but if the guy turns out to be a franchise quarterback, no one's going to really be paying attention.
It has to work, though.
It does have to work. It does. I agree with that, because
you've mortgaged everything at that point. You don't have picks going forward. Like, it absolutely has to work, or you have done damage that's going to be very hard to overcome. I mean, that's just kind of where it's at. And if you do that because you haven't addressed your needs and everything,
right,
like you absolutely have to hit on this quarterback, and then you got to go hit free agency hard. Like, you have to hit free agency hard and come out of there with, now you got to sign Tyrann Mathieu, and you got to sign Jarvis Landry, and like that has to be your approach.
Yeah. And that would be the not well received part of it, right? And given that, depending on who the quarterback is, do you want to maybe play the guy this year? Do you want to play him later? So there's a lot that goes into that decision, the talent around him. Do you feel like you can protect him? Do you feel like he has the weapons, or he's not going? So there's a lot that goes into it. But I think ideally, just speaking, explicitly to this example, you would like to see them stay still, and if they have a quarterback rate, super high, and he falls to them, I mean, that's even better, right? But if it, that doesn't play out that way, quarterbacks always tend to go earlier. So, I know people are always talking about, hey, quarterbacks, this ain't the year, man. I hear that every year, and they just keep going early, right? I mean, you got a guy like Matt Rule in Carolina, where his job is on the line basically this year for all intents and purposes, right? So what does Carolina do in the draft, right? Is him and the owner on the same page? I have no idea, right? But if you're Matt Rule, you want a quarterback, right? You got to start doing something, because at least maybe with a rookie quarterback, he starts showing some promise. You bought yourself a year, to kind of be able to stay there another year and develop this guy a little bit more, right? And so, we know what the Saints' needs are. Offensive tackle is something, safety is something, given if they don't do anything with Tyrann Mathieu. Offensive weapons is just, you need guys that's going to catch the ball, right? And so, ideally you can stay and address maybe 2 of those 3 needs, and that's best case scenario. But it's good to have options, and I think that with this trade and how they've positioned themselves, I think having options at this point is like definitely a good thing.
It's going to be interesting because, like, if Penning's gone in 16, or if you don't like him at 16 or 19, it's tough you're drafting away from one of those needs at that point. Like, because there probably isn't a safety there that's worthy of that pick. You probably got to wait until the second round until, the Penn State guy is probably.
I like that Michigan kid, that Daxton Hill.
But at 19, I don't know, like if the value's there for a safety at that point. So it's going to be interesting. Like I could definitely see him going off script and taking somebody at a non-obvious position of need, and that would be fine too. Like one of the things I've like discovered about covering football is like everybody in practice likes to say like, I want the team I like to draft the best player available, but they really don't want them to draft the best player available. Nobody wants a player where it's like, well, this is the best guy, but he maybe doesn't have an immediate path to play, so I'm going to be very angry about the pick if they make it. And nobody.
What if one of the pass rushers or who's rated to go top 10 is available, and they just drafted Peyton Turner and Marcus Davenport, like.
Yeah, I mean, that's just kind of, but
BPA, right?
in the long run, it ends up being fine. But nobody ever wants that to happen. They want all the picks, at least the first 2 or 3, like to be slotted into spots where, this guy's going to play from day one and be great, unless you were signing an LSU player to block the path of the draft pick. That is totally fine. It doesn't matter that the second round pick isn't starting.
Rip your mentions, man.
Yeah. So, but yeah, I mean, that's the thing though. Nobody really wants BPA. They want players at positions of need. And if it doesn't work out like that, it's okay. Like in the long run, it's always going to be better if you stock your team with good players. And it's just even weirder that people get mad about.
I would say who drafts BPA though? Like when you think about it, like
the Packers. I mean, they will draft guys at spots where they aren't going to play. Like, they're one of the teams that does it. There aren't a lot of teams that really do.
It's rare though. Like no one really no one drafts BPA really, right? Like you look at the teams that like the Jaguars. Are they going to take the guy who they feel is the number 1 player in the draft, or are they going to take the guy who's the number 1 player at a position of need?
Yeah,
right.
And that's usually how it goes, man. That's usually how it ends up hitting. But yeah, that's it's tough, man. A lot of teams usually aren't built to the point where they have everything in order to the point where you can enter the draft truly without any needs and kind of do it without any type of strategy. So that's another, it's just something that usually doesn't work out like that. But I think the Saints are in a spot where they might end up not taking one of the big 3 if they do sit still, because it's just very possible that the board doesn't fall that way for them. So it's going to be fascinating to kind of just see how they play those options. I do think that like the one spot where they might have to be aggressive is offensive tackle. I really think if you want to get somebody that's going to play right away, you're going to have to go up a little bit higher, because I don't think it's going to work out to the way they want it to. So either they're comfortable with James Hurst, or you hope for the best, or maybe that's a spot where you got to take matters into your own hands.
Yeah, because I mean, you got to think that. I mean, Neil, he goes first, right? If that guy even gets in your range, you're probably going to go get him. He's just like a ridiculous prospect. He's not going to be there when the Saints pick in no way, shape, or form, obviously. And next, I'm just gonna call him Iku, because I don't want to like disrespect that man's name. I would like drag it through the mud or nothing. So you would think that he's maybe the next tackle off the board. Then you got Cross next, and then then you got to figure out where Penning goes, right? And so if they do, I think we will get a really good idea about how they feel about that position. Like, is it a absolute we have to leave this draft with one of the first round tackles situations? Or is it a, hey, listen, if the guy falls to us, then we're going to, we're gonna stay put and we're gonna take him, or we're gonna let the draft come to us. And that kind of like brings me to another clip during the Peter King podcast when he was talking to Mickey Loomis, just about like philosophically how maybe some of the other options they could have. So I'm going to play that clip now, and then we'll jump back into it.
Things that we did talk about is that in his mind, he said, we absolutely are not done. In the next 3 weeks, we're going to be listening, because obviously there are other players that we're very interested that are probably going to go earlier than we pick. And the value of picks in this draft, everybody says, well, it's going to be really different. You're not going to have teams lusting over it and making huge trades. He brought up the Chicago Bears trade up with the New York Giants last year in the draft. Remember, the Bears go up from 21 to 11, and they trade this year's number 1, and then, there was other picks involved. But in essence, in order to move up 10 spots from 21 to 11, the Bears gave, the following year's first-round pick. So now that pick, basically with the Giants have the 5th and 7th picks in this draft. And Loomis's point was, you never know if there's going to be a team that, as one of our picks approaches, is going to be desperate to move up. He said, let's say one of the quarterbacks is there that somebody really wants. And who knows, they may trade up and we may be able to get a bounty for it. So Mickey Loomis's feeling with the Saints right now is, we'll be very happy to sit there with 2 picks in the teens and use both. But we also just want to keep our eyes and ears open, because we might be able to get a great trade as we get closer to the draft, or even on draft night and teams get desperate.
And that is going to end up being my favorite, one of my favorite topics for the night, because when he said, we're not done, right? Like, that's interesting to me, very interesting to me. So when you hear him say, when you hear him like kind of quote that, what he's hearing from Mickey Loomis, like, what's your thought process on 2 questions? What's your thought process on just him saying we're not done? What does that mean? And 2, do you think this is the year where the Saints potentially trade down? Is trading up a Sean Payton thing, or is it a Saints thing? I think that's going to be fun to see this year.
A couple things pop out there. This is my first time hearing this interview. So one of the things that was fascinating to me is that he mentioned the Giants. Mickey mentioned the Giants. I'm going to say his name wrong, but Ireland, I believe, hired Joe Schoen, their GM, in Miami in 2008. So there's a relationship there, which would probably make the possibility of a trade, maybe working out a trade ahead of time in case somebody's available, having the framework in place. I think all of that makes it very easy to make a draft night trade. So that's fascinating to me that team comes up. The other thing, I mean, Sean's gone, and they've done some things this offseason that I don't think Sean Payton would have done already. So I mean, he's no longer running the team. Just from a media standpoint, like, it's a whole different feel. Like, it's very clearly that this is kind of Mickey Loomis's operation now, whereas before, I think Sean kind of overshadowed everything a little bit. Not that Mickey was not an extremely powerful figure, but I think it was kind of everything was in Sean's personality, and Sean had earned that, through years of success and being one of the best coaches in the NFL.
He earned the right to be the coach that he was. Exactly.
Right. So it's possible Dennis Allen one day, he has a ton of success, and it's kind of, his whole operation. But I think right now, new coach, all that, I think it just feels very, very much like Mickey's calling a lot of the shots on everything. So, and I think one of the things about Mickey is that he's a little bit, not even a little bit, he's significantly more patient than Sean Payton was.
I think everybody's more patient than Sean Payton.
Sean was not a patient man. So I definitely think Mickey's willing to make the shrewd decisions, the slow burns, the not spend the $20 million in cap space they have, because sure, it's, I think, Sean wanted to be all in as much as possible every single season. Whereas I think Mickey's looking at things like, is it worth it to go all in? Do we have the roster to go all in? Is this team a player or 2 away from the Super Bowl, or is this a team where we get in the playoffs and try to see how things work out? And I think it's that, and I think it's a little bit of a slower, more methodical, more, I think Mickey's goal is to clean up the salary cap. I mean, there's just a lot of, there's a lot of stuff that's different already. So Sean isn't here. I think they would absolutely trade back if they felt the right decisions there. If there was a player they wanted and they didn't feel the value was there at 19, but maybe it's more there at 26, 27, and you can pick up a 4th round pick to move back 6, 7, 8 spots. I think those are all things that are now very much in play. Whereas, Sean was getting in competitive situations and trading up for quarterbacks that didn't even make the team. So, I mean, there's just things that I think are going to be a little bit different. And I mean, I think that could very easily be one of them.
Yeah. It's fascinating to me because, like I said, we've known how things have gone for so long. And like I said, I just like, the Saints are aggressive. The Saints are aggressive. They push the boundaries to the salary cap. And it's like Sean gone and it's like free agency is a little bit less active. Free agency. I mean, the cap is like matters a little bit more, now I still think they're an aggressive organization just by what they attempted to do to kind of get the trade for the quarterback in Cleveland now. So I think that's an aggressive move. This trade is an aggressive move, right? So they're not like passive. I just think there's little things that you can kind of point out and that stands out where you say, okay, this is a little bit different.
Yeah, they're definitely still extremely aggressive, but like you said, it's a different type of aggression. It's a more of a. I'm not trying to like suggest that it was like uncalculated before, because I think it was calculated in its own way. But I think the calculation, the formula they're using to sum things out is a little bit different now. And it's still kind of from the same cloth, but maybe you've grabbed a different cloth off the shelf at this point, and
the microfiber.
Right. So I think it's just a little bit different, but yeah, absolutely. And I don't think that it's just going to be all out like this is what it's got to be this one player in the draft no matter what, like at all costs. And that's kind of how they operated before, even with guys like Zach Bond. That was someone they absolutely had to have. And it doesn't always work out. Sometimes it does work out, but I think it's just going to be a little bit more of a just a little bit of a different approach trying to get to the same result.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, you could think like maybe guys like Ireland, I mean, he's a film scouting guy. He, that's how he kind of, made his way up through the NFL ladder. So, most of those guys with that mind state, like they want more draft picks, right? They want more opportunities to draft these guys who they spent all this time. I mean, think about it. You're a GM. You spent pretty much you spend like 12 months a year scouting players. And then this crazy head coach comes in here and trades half the draft for one player. And you're like, well, all right, all my little 3rd round guys and all those guys throw that out the way and let's just get to this other part of the draft, right? And I say it jokingly, right? But I mean, I'll be paying attention just to see how they move and shake with this draft. And he meant, like you said, he mentioned the Giants Chicago trade, and the Giants, they have 2 top 10 picks, right? And that's another thing that kind of goes into it. This is just a quick aside, but if you're the Saints, you got to be a little careful about if you want to like move up and get a quarterback. Because if you move up and get that now if he's good, it doesn't matter. But like you don't want to be gifting the Eagles a top 10 pick next year. Like you just that's a disaster, right? So you want to still field a competitive team, and I think they will. I think they have a team good enough, even right now, where they shouldn't be picking it high unless. I mean, I would say injuries, but they dealt with the injuries and they still didn't. I mean, minus Sean Payton, obviously, but at Mike Thomas and some health, and I think that they're covered there. But I think that if there's a year where the Saints trade down, I think this may potentially be that year. So, what are your thoughts about like them trading that pick? Like, I mean, that they could move out of the first, right? And or they could just move down in the first. Like, there's just a million things that could happen. With that pick, and just your thoughts on them like going the opposite direction that they usually go.
I think both approaches, have merit. I like the fact that for a long time it felt like they had the guys they felt were going to help the team and went and got them. And again, granted, they didn't always work out, and some of them are still to be determined. But I do like the conviction in the scouting process to where you have that extreme belief in your ability to locate this is the right guy for this team and I'm going to go get him no matter what. Like if you're making these decisions, I don't want any of the decisions to be passive decisions or where I'm okay with all 12 of these scenarios. No, I want you to have one, like this is the one that we want. And then going and making that happen is great. At the same time, though, I think there's merit in the approach of acquiring assets in the draft, maximizing the amount of picks you're making. And if you were going to trade back in a draft, doesn't even necessarily have to be in the first round. It could be somewhere else in there. I think
that's a good point.
I think doing it in a draft where there's all these extra COVID people and you have the bigger board, that, you know, larger board than you've had in other years, just because of the sheer amount of prospects. I think this is a good year to kind of maybe jump on top of some of that depth and maximize your picks in the middle rounds, and just kind of, you know, take that swelling amount in finding extra guys. So I think there's merit in all of it. You know, the one thing I don't ever want to see a team do, and I don't even think they draft very well, but the Patriots being on the extreme end of trading back. I don't like their process. And I think the one criticism of that team is that they probably don't draft as well as they should. And they end up hitting because they have so many picks. But I mean, it just kind of feels like chaotic. I don't know, man. Like they're zigging way too far from everybody else. But every now and then a strategic trade back, I think it is a good thing. Acquiring more assets, having more picks. You know, I think all those things have merit.
Yeah. I'm with you. It's, you know, like I said, it'll be a very telling draft when we look at, you know, I think one of the biggest things coming out of the draft is just like philosophically, you know, the structure of the organization, how they approach the draft, and how aggressive they are or they aren't. Like that's going to be something I'll be paying attention to, you know, even more so, you know, with them having additional picks. So, well, what they do have 2 picks in the first round, and I would hope that one of those picks would definitely be a wide receiver, because, you know, I think that's the biggest need on the team. I think that's not even a controversial statement at this point. Some people can disagree. You can maybe say offensive tackle, but it's one of the bigger needs on the team. I'll say that. So we looked at some guys. We took a look at a couple of receivers, and I'll let you pick which guy you want to talk about first. The ball's in your court. Run with it.
First, we have a discount code running at the website, NewOrleans.Football/subscribe, 20% off the first payment of any plan with the code draft season, one word, draft season. When you go on there, it'll say have a coupon, click that, pop it in, and it'll get you 20% off. You know, overall, we watched Ohio State. We'll just do the Ohio State guys today.
Yeah.
Personally, when I look at, I like Garrett Wilson a lot. So let me start out by saying that I like Garrett Wilson a lot. I think he might even be more ready right now than Olave. Like, just, I don't think Olave's on ready. I just think that Wilson checks more boxes immediately right now. If you ask me to pick between one of these two guys, and we're talking about in like a perfect controlled setting, quarterback that throws us anticipation, great, you know, all things being equal. Now, you can get to a climate and one guy develops and one guy doesn't because they're in different climates, but same climates, great quarterback, all that stuff, everything playing to their advantages. I think I like Olave better long-term because he has an absolutely elite trait, and that's his route running ability, his ability to separate. I think it's the truly elite trait. I think that trait of his is arguably better than anybody else's top trait in this draft class. He has issues with his game. He's a little bit frail. I think the frailness can be developed. He can become more of a stronger, tougher, contested catch type guy, kind of blocking a little bit better, just breaking tackles. I think he had like 1 broken tackle last year, and it's not because he lacks vision. Like when things are blocked, like there's yak yards and he knows where to go. It's just he's not breaking tackles. So I think that, you know, the weaknesses in his game, I look at him and I say, okay, this guy has elite traits, and then the things he doesn't do well, they can develop so he can be even better. I think coming in right away, I think he's a very, very good player. I think he's a high level number 2 right away. And I think over time he develops and he can truly be possibly a featured type player in an offense. But coming into New Orleans, he'd be opposite Mike Thomas. Perfect fit. Give him some time to develop. Mike age, you know, prices out, contracts out, or whatever. And I think he's ready at that point to be kind of your guy. And then you bring in your next number 2, and you know you're off to the races.
Okay, yeah. I watched both of those guys also. I think they're very different, right? I think that's one of the first things that stands out. Like when you look at Wilson, Like he comes across to me as like a guy that can be more of a volume receiver, right? Like he's a guy that I can see him, catching like more balls per game than Olave, for instance. Or Olave, I think that I don't necessarily see him as a volume guy, but I kind of see him as a chunk yardage guy, right? I think he's one of those guys where, you know, he'll have like more his yards per catch will be higher than what you see from someone like a Wilson, right? Wilson, he's a different type of player. He's fast because he ran a fast 40, but he doesn't necessarily play like that, right? He plays like, man, I'm just trying to think of a guy like him, right? I'll think of a couple off the top of my head, but he plays like he's someone that you can move around, right? And I think he's a really good route runner, also. By the way, Olave is a really good route runner, also. But I think both of those guys run really good routes. They both seem like smaller. They both look small on tape. I think Wilson plays a little bit bigger than his size is, and I'm pretty sure he can kind of grow into his frame a little bit more. He's really good after the catch. That was one of my favorite things about his game. With Olave, man, his routes are very good. I think I'm with you. I think he runs really good routes. I think his speed is something that you see very easily. Like he's a very easily, like just a fast guy, right? I think he's going to help your offense even when he's not catching the ball, because he can just really just blow the top off your defense, right? I mean, and he gets to his speed. It's almost like he's like gliding on the field. Like he's like a smooth like runner. And that kind of stands out because the speed in guys like that can be really deceptive. So I think both of those guys are good prospects. I share the same concerns with you with Olave. Obviously, I think he just lacks the physical. I think the physical part of the game is something that he just has to develop, right? You mentioned the blocking. I think he's, obviously he's not a good blocker. I think he needs to build some strength, maybe a little bit more interest in that part of his game also. I think, we'll see what he develops to in the middle of the field. And there's some, there's holes in everybody's game, right? I mean, no one's a perfect prospect, but both of these guys, they do project well to the NFL. If I had Drew Brees as my quarterback in his later years, I would be saying pick Garrett Wilson, just because I think he kind of fits more into that, the type of offense that they ran, right? But I
maybe.
I
don't know, man. Like he like I think him playing with Brees, like he gets open so quickly, and I think in like somebody that throws with anticipation, like I think he could be a high level volume guy just based on how open he is and somebody that takes advantage of it. Like I think if Jameis played with the confidence, and I agree that I think Wilson's maybe a little bit more of a natural fit for late age Drew Brees, just like Brandon Cooks wasn't necessarily the best fit for late age Drew Brees. But I think Olave's like he's a different player than Brandon Cooks too. Like he can get open, he like Cooks like just was so mechanical in how he ran routes and after the catch and everything. And like Olave's like a lot more like fluid, and there's more. There's just more to his game. So I think he could have worked with. That's neither here nor there. On topic with Jameis, I think if Jameis plays with the confidence that he had in Tampa Bay, and there isn't the fear of mistake with a guy like Olave, like it could be unlocked. Like not just the deep ball, like hitting them as soon as he looks like he's coming open. If Jameis plays like he did last year, I think some of that separation ability is even negated a little bit, because if you're waiting, it's not as advantageous, or you're just not getting the ball in space and all those different things. But I agree with you that he needs to get stronger. Some of the contested catch stuff he just needs to get stronger. I mean, it's just he gets tougher, and I think doing stuff over the middle in traffic's a little bit easier. I don't think that issue is as pronounced as some of the scouting reports that I've read. Like I saw him killing people on crossing routes and some different things over the middle, taking hits. It didn't seem like this like huge issue to me that people are making it out to be. I think we've kind of reached the point in the scouting process where people have been watching the same players for so long. Like every year this happens, like people develop new issues in mid-April. It's like, this isn't as bad as you're saying it is, but it's definitely something that could be better. Absolutely. I mean,
it's a physical game, right? And when a guy lacks physicality in football, and that doesn't mean he's not going to be a good player. It's just like, okay, well,
Tyreek Hill lacks physicality. He's an amazing football player, possibly the best wide receiver in the NFL. I mean, there's more than one way to get it done, and this guy definitely gets everything done. And like I said, I mean, he's what, 6'1", 180. Like he can easily gain 15, 18 pounds and still be great and then be a little bit stronger. And I mean, Might not even have to be that much weight, but there's room for him. I don't know if he's like a huge looking dude that could, but there's definitely room for him to get a little bit stronger and to address some of those things that I think are slight hindrances to him being a complete wide receiver.
Yeah. Yeah. I agree there. But one of the things that kind of stood out to me, and I mean, you could tell me how you feel about it. When I watched Wilson, he was someone who, like, I think like day one, you can move him around the formation, like slide outside, inside, Z, X, etc. With Olave, I think he's probably like, I would probably put him at the Z at the start of his career and just let him develop there, get him some easy completions, make him, make the way he wouldn't have to deal with press, and he can use that route running ability, which he's really good at. Like his footwork is really good.
He can beat press. Like he can beat press with his releases off the line. I mean, he's that good. Like he's that good.
Yeah. So you would like.
I mean, to play wide receiver for the Saints, you got to play everywhere. Like there's just no. Like they just don't do that. Like they just.
Yeah. That's a good point. That's a good point. Yeah, I'm a little concerned about him being on the outside. I'll be honest with you. But that's not saying he can't do it. It's just
Cooks won out there though. Like, and Cooks wasn't a
he wasn't a super physical guy. Yeah. Just depends on the cornerback too and the scheme, but it's different.
You just got to know how to use your traits. Like he's gonna have to learn how to use his traits to win, and then I mean, I don't think it's. I don't know. Like we'd see. I don't. That wasn't something that screamed out to me as like, man, he can't do this. It's just like, okay, he's gonna have to win his way, and like you see how he wins, and I mean, there's gonna be tough matchups for. Prime Stephon Gilmore on anybody is an issue. So, I mean, there's going to be some matchups that are going to be tougher because, you aren't going to win that hand combat and stuff like that. But I mean, you just gotta find a way to beat those. And look, here's the thing: like, if someone's trying to press him the whole game, if he wins 4 times, that's
he's behind he's behind the cornerback. Yeah, he's that fast. Yeah, he's that fast. Yeah, very fast. And like I said, I think the thing that you get with him is, you just kind of got to know where that guy is on the field, because he'll be behind your safety, right? He just has that type of game changing speed. So, I think, I mean, if they draft, if he's the pick, I understand it. If Wilson is the pick, I think both of those guys are first round wide receivers. I think that's pretty. I mean, at least in my opinion, there's some other guys who belong in that conversation also, and we'll get to some of those. Someone asked me this, and I hesitated. I was like, man, is this a good? What do you think Do you think they would take? Or you think there's a chance where they would take 2 wide receivers in the first round? I don't think it's gonna happen. I would be shocked, but I was like, I don't want to just, maybe other people got different opinions on it. I don't want to just be the sole blocker of a question. So, have at it.
I mean, it depends what's available. I don't think it's outrageous. I mean, why not?
I would be shocked that they did it. I wouldn't be against it. I just think it would be, I mean, that'd be interesting, right? But that would let you know how they feel about that position.
Well, here's the thing. Like, you look at wide receiver now, the top paid wide receiver makes more than the top paid tackle, the top paid cornerback, the top paid pass rusher, I believe. Like, I believe that it's now
second highest player and position in
quarterback.
Football, right?
Yeah, I believe someone can fact check that. And if it's not across the board, like it's right on par with all of them. So
no other position is making 30 million per year. Yeah. So I know you're right.
So that's where it's at now. That's where this thing has come. And
it's true, man. That's true.
You play how many of these guys on the field? The Saints use 4 to 5 of them every single week, at least 4, and you can't pay all of them $30 million. You can't really afford to pay one of them $30 million. I think it's a position where you got to spread out your assets. And I think moving forward, if this trend continues, smart teams are going to develop wide receivers, draft them, and then let the Jaguars give them the second contract. And, that's just going to kind of be, I think you just have to spread your assets out across the board. And look, this goes back to the other conversation earlier too, like the value of a rookie quarterback. If you have a rookie quarterback, then you can spend a little bit and do different things on offense. But there is a limited amount of resources to some degree. The cap can be stretched. Like, we don't have to go down that road, but when you have that rookie QB, you can just do so much more stuff. Or, so I think that's where you get into the situation where and I was arguing about this with people all day. Like, I think that someone was like, you don't treat them like lottery tickets. I think you absolutely treat quarterback picks like lottery tickets. I think you should take one. If you aren't going early, I think you should try to find a pick.
Yeah.
Unless you have, Aaron Rodgers in his 20s or 30s or whatever, and that, second, third, fourth,
Shoot your
fifth
shot,
round,
man.
somewhere in there, just grab one and find out. And then guess what? If they don't work, let them go. It's no big deal. This is the only position in the NFL where like if you get a pick wrong, people act like it's a cardinal sin. Like if you draft a safety in the 4th round and that player really never becomes anything, nobody really spends a lot of time thinking about like that 4th round safety because they just get replaced and people are like, cool, they replace them. If you draft a quarterback in the 4th round and he doesn't become a starter or something, like people bring it up consistently. And it's just like, wow, you missed on this pick. They shouldn't draft him. They drafted this guy. No, like if you draft Zach Bond and then you get Pete Werner, people are just glad that you got a better linebacker. That's just where people are at with it. But if you turn around and take a quarterback, it's just, oh my God. And this is the most important position on the team. You should have a resource, if not every year, every other year, whether it's bringing someone in or drafting someone, use the roster spot to try to constantly be developing somebody, finding an answer, doing something, because A, the asset appreciates if you hit. B, that player ascends to a point where you can get rid of your overpaid quarterback. You can have Tom Brady and have him replace the first $100 million man. Those things few and far between, but when they happen, it's a super hack. And you can't be early on replacing that position if you aren't trying to be early. So if you aren't trying to be early, you're trying to catch up when it's too late. And, I would much rather burn 6 second, third, 4th round picks over a period of 10 years than have to give up 3 first round picks and $40 million to trade for a quarterback. And that's just kind of how I look at it. You would rather avoid that scenario because having a rookie quarterback is the greatest hack in professional sports.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, the value of the quarterback is not going down.
No.
Right. So if you don't have a guy, then I mean, even if your guy's getting late, like try to steal a Dak Prescott in the 4th round. Right. I mean, just like shoot your shot. And if you hit, then wow, your franchise is relevant. You're gonna fill them stands for years to come. And if you're not, then you're kind of in a position that, the Saints may or may not find themselves in, where you kind of, the earlier this offseason, they were basically about to give up, 3 first round picks for a quarterback. Right. And when you don't have one, then that's what it's going to require to get one. And also to your point about it being a lottery, like you can do so much around that player when he's on that rookie contract. It's like almost a cheat code, really, right? And I mean, and don't mess around and like have your salary cap in a good position when he's there. Like, I don't know how the Jaguars are bad. like I don't know, just signed a bunch of offensive linemen and wide receivers and figured out defense later while my quarterback learned how to, you know what I mean? Well, not figure out defense later, but you get what I'm saying. Like and then you hope that by the time he gets that contract, then he's developed to the point where he's lifting the talent around him instead of requiring that level of, talent around him to be successful. Right. And so, I mean, you see what a good quarterback can do. Nobody was talking about Tampa's O-line until Brady came, and then, he made them better. Right. And he made them better because he got rid of the ball. Like Drew, I mean, as good as the Saints O-line have been over the years, they've had some really good guys. The guy back there helped because, they knew when the ball was coming out. They knew he wasn't scrambling. They knew where he was going to be. The timing and anticipation was there, all that stuff. So that's just an example of like how that position can just be so valuable. Like you don't even need as good offensive linemen if you got a quarterback that just knows when to get the ball out. So yeah, you're right. It's a lottery ticket and you're just trying to hit that Powerball. If you hit it, then you're rich for life.
I was having a conversation with someone earlier, and a bunch of people like jumped in on this person's side. So like, I'm just gonna bring it up because it's gonna sound like a fringe talking point, but like this is something that's like seriously happening. And they were like, well, they shouldn't draft a quarterback because they got Ian Book last year, and they got to keep developing him. And it's just like, he's a 4th round pick.
I'm sorry,
he's a 4th round pick, and bringing in another guy doesn't stop his development. You go into camp, you have 4 quarterbacks, everybody competes, and there's a few things that happen here. Ian Book just gets beat out by everybody else, and you're fine with trying to get him on the practice squad. And if you don't get him on the practice squad, you're okay with what happened because you got a better player, and that's just kind of how it goes. B, he plays well enough to stay on the roster, and you carry 4 quarterbacks and you figure it out. And if they keep these elevations in that like they had for COVID, it's really not a hard thing to manage, and that becomes fine. And if they don't, you still figure it out, and you got 4 quarterbacks, and it just kind of is what it is, and that wouldn't be the most rare outcome in the world.
Yep.
Or C, he plays so well that he becomes the backup quarterback, and you just cut Andy Dalton. And I mean, that's a scenario that you would love to have. Oh man, we burned this money on Andy Dalton, but Ian Book is now solidified himself as a viable NFL backup quarterback. And while we take a hit this year, we no longer have to spend the money, and we got our possible guy that could develop and ascend into being the number one. And it's just kind of, those are the things, like building on like, I'm not going to say building on a strength, but like adding to a position and creating competition and having scenarios. It's never a bad thing. But a 4th round pick, any position, who you have, and again, he could end up beating out Andy Dalton just straight up without bringing in somebody else. So it's not over. Same thing happened with Brady. He started out lower, and then going into that year, number 2 on the depth chart. But the fact of the matter is if you're in a position where you drafted a guy in the 4th round, and then you just drafted a player to sit ahead of him, and your 4th round pick is looking like number 3 on the depth chart, that's kind of telling you where the team sees him at this very moment. And to me, that doesn't say this guy has number 1 starting quarterback upside, and we're going to foster it and do everything we can.
I think they're saying he's not a backup yet.
Yeah, like he still might be a backup, but it's not saying to me like, man, this guy's on a rocket ship to Mars right now. And it's just that's where you got to be, kind of realistic about it. And if he has to compete with somebody to keep his job, he sinks or swims. And I mean, that's fine. Like, it's a 4th round pick. Like, 4th round picks aren't franchise changers. Typically.
Yeah.
Sometimes they are, but typically they aren't.
Yeah. I mean, if you look up and get a Dak, then congratulations. But for the most part, that's not the case. You look at the majority of quarterbacks I think Kirk Cousins was a 3rd or 4th round pick too, but those guys are few far in between. You look at the best quarterbacks in the NFL, you would probably say, Mahomes, Josh Allen, Aaron Rodgers, Brady's obviously a late round guy, but most of these guys are drafted in the 1st round, right? Typically, because quarterbacks, like if you look at a guy like Sam Howell, who maybe has some traits that you can develop as a quarterback, right? And if he figures his game out, he can be a really good quarterback. He's not going to go in the 4th round. He's probably going to go in the 2nd or 3rd, right? And so, quarterbacks just don't last that long. And if the guy's in the 4th, then he's in the 4th for a reason. And so, I'll be honest.
Let me tell you their scouting guidelines by round, what they expect.
Okay.
1st rounders, immediate impact player, rare college player, no limitations. That's their highest graded 1st round player. Then there's a 2nd tier in the 1st round. 1st year NFL starter will make impact early, top 10 caliber players. And then there's a 3rd tier, NFL starter, solid 1st round ability, starter if need exists, contributes early. 2nd round, 1st year starter ability, might need time to develop, will contribute as a rookie. 3rd round, good potential to start. 4th round, good backup / contributor, could spot start, should have special quality and upside. So, okay. So 4th round, you're not looking,
for the moon here.
Right. 5, solid backup, some potential to develop, has a defined role on special teams. 6, make it as a backup special teamer, fair long range potential to start. 7th round, make it in right situation, some ability to develop, probably look to replace. And that's it. I mean, so you get outside of the top 3, and they literally are lottery tickets. And
shoot for the moon, man. Yeah. You're trying to hit on one of these guys. So, that definitely makes sense. This draft is going to be interesting. It's going to be interesting. I think we're going to learn a lot about, the team and their philosophy, and just kind of where they think they are as an organization. And specifically, if they're on the board, and if one of both, and I'm pretty sure it's not going to be the case, but if one of both of those quarterbacks are on the board, like, we're going to learn a whole lot about the New Orleans Saints, when they begin to make those draft picks. So we're going to be covering it here on NewOrleans.Football. I don't know what else to say. I mean, you guys, you see the code down there on the bottom of the screen. Use the code draft season, And you can use them on any plan, by the way. So just go in there and pick one of those tiers that work out best for you. Use the code draft season and, join the team. We got Patreon pods on Friday. We got articles going up. There's a mock draft on the site right now. If you haven't read it and you're a sub, you can go check that out. You're a subscriber, you go and check that out. If you want to, kind of hear more about, how Nick sees the draft, and he kind of gets to share a little bit more of his information and some of the things he's hearing and just his philosophy on how these things go. And this guy watches a lot of films, so just go check it out, man. I mean, we're doing a lot of things. We're changing some things up. The arrow's pointed up for NewOrleans.Football. We're always trying to add something to what we do. You guys see we add a little bit of twist to the pod. DM me or tweet at me. Let me know what you guys think about it. If you love it, if you hate it, if you want more of it, just holler at us, man. Just holler at us. We do this for you guys.
And Angry Ocho's right. You can use a code to upgrade. And Ocho, man, I was reading your comments here. You might be the most level-headed person that I see on social media, on YouTube. I appreciate when you come in with just common sense. It's always appreciated.
We need more of that. We need a lot more of that. So support us, please. We need you guys to keep this thing going. So thank you guys for joining us. Thank you guys for jumping in on these live pods. These are fun. So you guys keep jumping in here with us. We appreciate that. Thank you guys for listening. We will definitely see you next week. We out.